then one of the two sides will do winning. Hopefully that side will be team. So without further ado, I would like to invite Leander to offer a summary speech for side opposition.
There are too many arguments to respond here. You know, there are so many different perspectives that I'm going to respond mainly to the arguments actually of my opposition and to similar arguments. We've heard that politicians are no good. We hear about how terrible the USSR was for some random reason. But transnational corporations are essentially planned economies. They supplant the market for thousands of intermediate products. Planned economies, but they have no democracy. They have total control over their workers. What really confuses me is that we talk about the self-interested nature of bureaucrats, but whose interests are these capitalists working in, if it's not their own? And why are people in the market, why are big businessmen so much more angelic than politicians? These are things I don't really understand. Do you really think that the biggest barrier to entry into a market and to market efficiency is regulation? There are much bigger barriers, for example, economies of scale, start-up costs for technology, collusion, etc. But beyond this, their point about regulation really exasperates me. The majority of regulation is to serve one of two purposes: either to preserve competition in the face of the monopolizing tendencies I outlined earlier, or to ensure that the market does not destroy things which are basic to a decent human existence. For example, tolerable working conditions, a wage which is enough to live on, pollution, living in a city with breathable air without pollution. The free marketer's argument about regulation harming efficiency is the equivalent of saying we should get all the people off a bus to allow it to drive faster. Now, we've heard today from Peter that this is not really an argument between who wants less and more state intervention, but about what type of intervention we want. Their side wants intervention which wages and trade unions are suppressed and which tax and benefits are manipulated to redistribute wealth from the poor to the rich. We want intervention which is going to support vulnerable groups and alleviate poverty. Now, on this, they brought up the issue of the processing information as well, Eamon did, and how markets are the only thing which are able to process information. Now, regarding the environment, once we take into account environmental limits, it is clear that the free market has massive problems processing information beyond short-term demand and supply. Demand and supply creates a price level which, according to traditional free market theory, determines a correct allocation of resources. However, one problem with this argument is that it relies on the notion that all consumers and producers within the market have access to perfect information, which is near impossible. How can we expect individual market actors to understand the complexities of the Earth's biological systems and to behave in an appropriate manner during every transaction in the global marketplace to ensure that peatlands are preserved, that wild fisheries are maintained, that sustainable levels of carbon dioxide are emitted into the atmosphere, that vital phosphorus and nitrogen are not drained from the soil? The claim is ludicrous. Instead, governments are, with the help of scientific advisors, in a far better position to be able to decipher what production, consumption and trade are wise and unwise, beneficial and harmful, and what's impossible. Milton Friedman, one of the most famous 20th century free market ideologues, was once asked by an interviewer what his utopia would look like. He responded by saying that he wants to live in a society where everybody would be able to choose what colour tie they wore. This is a worthless vision, to say the least, even if it were attainable under a free market system with minimal state intervention, which it isn't. I want to live in a society where people have real control over their lives, over social structures and institutions, over their communities, over their governments, and over their economy. I want to live in a society where people can identify problems and have the power to deal with them. Why should we tolerate any longer inequality that nobody likes, deprivation that nobody wants, crises that nobody understands, and environmental destruction which jeopardizes our very civilization? What kind of system would bring us so close to the edge and then speed up? We are driving towards a precipice, and free market capitalism is putting its foot on the accelerator. There's no way of putting on the brakes or turning the car around. Individuals are powerless within the marketplace. It allows no cooperation and undermines our collective decision-making power, which may have a hope in steering the car or deciding which way to turn. Instead, everybody in the car is distracted by fighting for the most comfortable seat. I don't care how you vote tonight. For me, this was not an exercise in intellectual masturbation. I basically came here to offer you a warning that the arguments by my opposition tonight are the arguments of the powerful, arguments which are only taken seriously due to the huge amounts of money which have been thrown behind their propagation historically by corporations, businessmen and elites. And I came to offer you a warning that so long as the free market continues to be allowed free reign over our democratic institutions and our society, then it will destroy itself and it will take us and our environment down with it.
Leander for his speech and his warning, and speaker from the proposition rather summarise the case for his side of it.
Comrades, I say that because I think in terms of objectives we are remarkably similar on the different sides of this table. Adam Smith, who Peter of course mentioned, the reason that he believed in a free market economy is exactly the same reason that I believe in a free market economy, because I think it is the best way of helping the working poor. When you look at what has actually taken more people out of poverty than anything else, it is not socialism, it was not the Soviet Union, it was not Mao's China, it was the fact that countries like India and China are now part of the world economic system, they are trading with the rest of us, they have opened up to choice and competition and free markets. That's why we believe in free markets. What we oppose is the unholy alliance, as Adam Smith opposed it, the unholy alliance between money and power. Yes, of course, business people will sidle up to politicians and try to get regulations in their favour and tax benefits in their favour. Yes, of course they will do that. And the larger that government is, the more interventions there are, then the worse that problem becomes. So what we need is an economy which is open and competitive, where new firms can come in, not one where large firms will lobby the government for regulations in their favour to keep out competition. Yes, I do believe in intervention in some things. Yes, I believe in environmental intervention. Yes, of course I do, because things like pollution and so on are very difficult to deal with. If they were easy, the market would do it already, and in some cases the market doesn't. But if possible, you should use market structures where you can. Doesn't mean to say that some big corporation has to own the atmosphere. Don't be silly. What we have is a situation where you can impose markets or quasi-market systems, like Iceland and New Zealand does for fishing rights, for example. You have a market in fishing rights. People don't sort of own a bit of the ocean, but they have a market in rights. And that encourages sensible use of the resource. Leander, I think, sort of got us off on a wrong foot with his kind of Marxist analysis. And let me say that size is not the same as monopoly. Big markets, you need to be big size. That's true. Look at Microsoft, Apple, Starbucks. I could think of many others. But what do they all have in common, apart from the fact they all came from California? Well, what they have in common is they didn't exist 30 years ago. The market moves on. We don't actually go to war with horses and bayonets. Quite right. And what Leander seems to want is a situation where we preserve the economy in amber rather than letting it move on. It's a sort of French version of The Apprentice. It's exactly the same, except nobody ever gets fired. Peter, of course... Peter, of course, who I'm glad to say has brought his fan club, and he had arguments that are so wide, in fact, very wide range of arguments, but so wide that I fear that his left hand doesn't know what his extreme left hand is doing. He thought that we were statists. Well, nothing could be further from the truth. That is a complete fiction. Well, no, it isn't a complete fiction, because even fiction has a coherent plot. In our view, the market is the most moral system that is possible. It is based on voluntary exchange. When you go into a shop and buy something, You buy it voluntarily, the shopkeeper gives it to you voluntarily, no force is required. When you intervene, you need force. You need the force of government, and ultimately the threat of jail if you don't comply. That is why you need an open, competitive market. So we on this side of the House have faith in human beings. We don't believe that they have to be led like sheep. We don't believe that they have to be forced to do things that they feel are against their own interests. We believe that people should be free to express their own values in the market economy without others choosing for them and telling them what they should have. We believe very strongly that politicians, like businessmen, yes, I'm very sceptical, like Adam Smith, I'm sceptical of them too, but politicians have the power. A BP executive can't put you in jail, a minister can. And politicians are no good at running things. I think they've demonstrated that over and over again. They are inept, and in many cases they are even criminal. So I would ask you to vote for our own rights to decide for ourselves, not the power and the right of the powerful in office to decide it for us. Thank you very much.
And invite you to vote once more. A couple of caveats. So firstly, if you didn't vote at the beginning, please don't vote now, because it makes the maths not work. And that's just that. And secondly, yeah, remember there's proposition, opposition and abstention. So yeah, I will vote now. Vote in proposition, please. Cool. Vote in opposition, please. And vote in abstention, please. Fantastic. Well, Harry does an unfortunate but necessary set of mathematical calculations. Some prizes. An honorary prize, Darcy, who had enough of our chocolate anyway, probably would resent such capitalist icons. Round of applause, Darcy. Would like to come and get chocolate after we've done all the other announcing stuff, that would be lovely, rather than leaping over people now, which is always awkward. So those two people are Tom on the left over there somewhere from the Business Society, Lottie in the middle-ish somewhere at the front, and Felix right at the back over there. Congratulations to all of those speakers.
General wider debate. It was very, very close. So by doing a one vote, we have opposition win the debate.